Namaskar. Today we are going to discuss about the urban disaster management, how the urban development is taking place and what is the impact of disaster. I will start this particular presentation with a very current fact is that the study was conducted by United Nations, and in 1950 out of 15 megacities in the world, only the 4 megacities, in fact 5 megacities were belonging to the developing countries. Those megacities were Moscow, Shanghai, Chicago, Calcutta and Beijing. But after 50 years of time, the scenario changed, and scenario was out of 15 megacities, only 4 megacities were from developed countries, and remaining 11 megacities they represented from the developing countries. Those megacities in 2000 it was Seoul, Mexico, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, Delhi, Manila, Calcutta, Shanghai, Jakarta, Dhaka. But what will happen after 2015? Out of 15 megacities, only the 3 megacities will be belonging to developed countries, and those megacities will be Tokyo, New York and Los Angeles, and remaining all 12 megacities, they will be represented from the developing countries. So scenarios are changing in a big way, and we are finding that developing countries, there is a change. Urbanization is taking place in a big way, and in developing countries somehow we are ignoring the sustained development concept, and because of that the construction of buildings, construction of infrastructure, that is not resilient to disasters. The UN study further says that in developed countries the rate of growth of urban environment, it is very high, it is exponentially high, but once the same thing is compared in the developed countries, it is quite in the downside. Also in the rural areas, in both developing and developed countries, there is a trend of declination, and it is declining in the urban areas, also at the developing countries, all developed countries also. But the pace of down in industrialized country or developed country is very high, and in developing country it is also getting gradually high. Once we are comparing the urban disasters and comparing with the rural disaster, the scenes are absolutely different. Maybe rural disaster, the losses are in terms of buildings, but in urban areas, if you try to just see the losses, we are finding that most of the losses are in terms of human losses, because the occupancy, the population density is very high in the urban areas, and once we compare with the rural areas, it is quite less. Mega cities are practically destined to the risk. Whether the risks are natural catastrophic weather, environmental health or terrorism, mega cities are more vulnerable. The causes of losses in the mega cities are complex, from natural hazards, technological, social, political, infrastructural risk to economic risk. These causes fall into 4 major risk categories: natural hazards, technological disasters, industrial disasters and social and political disasters. Purely financial risks are also like the collapse of the financial market. The consequences can likely be divided into the 4 categories. One might be your environmental losses, personal losses, property losses, pure economic losses. We might be remembering one thing, that Bombay, there was a stock exchange collapse, and because of that there was a huge financial losses. So this is also one of the disasters that we have to look at this moment. Property losses, many of the disaster has hit the urban environment, and we have found that more property losses have been incurred. Personal losses, either you talk about Orissa super cyclone, either Gujarat earthquake. In all disasters we are finding mostly it starts with the huge loss of human lives. And environmental losses, the contamination of air, soil, water, damage to flora, fauna, biodiversity and climate change. These are the basic impacts we are finding it now. Now if you see the Bombay, or if we are talking about Mexico City, they have certain similarity. Comparing the Mexico City in 500 years back, it was a lake, but in 1910 a small patch of habitation settlement appeared, and once we found 2000, after 90 years of time, we found that lake is almost vanished and it is all settlements around. And now the situation is such that what we have seen during 1910, it is opposite to that, like less and less of water body and more of the settlements it is seen in the Mexico City. What we can conclude out of this particular development? These developments are not sustained, because if you talk about Mexico City, it has been visited by earthquakes, and earlier earthquake it has shown colossal losses of properties and the human life. Why? Because of the reclaimed land. Bombay, comparing Mexico City and the Bombay, Bombay is also having the same approach for development. We are finding that the Bombay, that the 6 islands now reclaimed, and Navi Mumbai has come up, the reclaimed area. So this is also Bombay is prone to earthquake, we can say, but thanks God that Bombay has not seen bigger earthquake in recent past. But once it is prone to it, we cannot simply ignore that the problem of disaster or problem of earthquake for the Bombay city. So we require a very stringent action, stringent rules and regulations, technology, and instatement of and establishment of techno-legal regime in the area for better disaster management and response. City is having a different climate, and we say it's the local climate. The mega city are pronounced to heat islands. The mean temperature at the center, it is higher than the outer periphery. Maybe sometimes 10 degrees centigrade, it is in the core area, it is higher than the outside area. It is all happening because that concrete structures, less of vegetation, less of more of pollution, more of your emission. These are all together contributing towards the mega city to be acting like a heat islands. Extreme weathers is moderated in the cold season. In addition, considerably less dew, fog, frost develops there. In a warm season, the weather extremes are often significantly intensified. Sometimes we are finding that in urban areas, mist, fog, it is quite dense than the outer side. Concrete buildings and paved areas heat up considerably once they are in the sun. The effect is particularly serious once they are long heat waves, because it considerably reduces nighttime cooling. This particular experience we are finding in Delhi, Hyderabad and all bigger cities in India. Even that it is going to be very much people like older people, kids, children, they became more vulnerable to this type of climate. High concentration of the aerosols, exhaust gases and dusts are emitted in the mega cities. This is somehow putting pressure on our health, putting pressure on our maintenance of the buildings, cleaning that particular whole area. So these are the high concentrations of aerosols, exhaust gases are significantly contributing towards the loss of property or economic losses in terms, because you are spending more in terms of just removing those dust, and sometimes for your health also you require to spend some money. Mega city develops its own internal wind climate, and if you go to the urban areas, certain pockets you will be finding there is a good breeze a very fast breeze you are going to get it. Why? It is because of the tunneling effect. You are getting speed of velocity of the wind is higher in certain pockets, and because of the consistent higher velocity of wind, there is a chance of wear tear in the buildings or the infrastructure, and that is putting additional cost to the management. As urban area is mostly paved with the concrete and asphalt, large proportion of rainwater runs away on the surface. The sewage system is often not designed for this. This results in the torrential rain in the big cities. Local floodings are expected in those areas. And Bombay, and in totality I can say all mega cities, all moderate level cities, they are suffering from such type of problems. Why? Because runoff is very fast, and the discharge capacity of the drain, it is designed earlier, it cannot cope up with that particular runoff velocity, and that is leading towards the temporary floodings. If the drains are not properly cleaned, and then there will be flooding and water logging for longer time. And this type of episode we have seen in Bombay, and sometimes in Pune also we have seen that how, because of the high tides and excessive runoff to the drain, it created a bigger water log, and many people died in the mega city like Bombay. High-rise building, towers, masts and antennas regularly attract lightning, and in a storm the towering buildings of many mega cities act like a magnet for lightning, because it fetches lightning, and thunder lightnings are reported at the top of this particular towers or the masts. Whenever there is a violent hailstorm, a large percentage of building and the cars concentrated in the cities are damaged. Sometimes hailstorms are really impacting in a big way. Then heat islands. I can show you one example which I have taken it from the Munich Re document, that is showing that how a Salzburg area, a temperature contouring has been drawn for the area, and in the central part of the Salzburg city and outside, how the temperature is gradually coming down. So in the central part, the city, the temperature is very very high, and as you are going away, the temperature is considerably coming down and down. Infrastructure and technological disasters. Bhopal gas tragedy, which led to the life of 15,000 people, and the reason was the people were ignorant about the disaster, and methyl isocyanate was leaked in the winter season, and people were sleeping. The people who were sleeping, they inhaled that particular toxic gas, and people died, and this led to the life of 15,000 people. Apart from that, many of the industrial countries, they have faced such type of problems. A dynamite explosion at the barrack in a very densely populated area of Nigeria, Lagos, on 27 January 2002 resulted to the life of 500 fatalities. A similar accident in Colombia in 1956 left over 2,000 people dead. There are certain more examples of it. A firework explosion at the large informal market in Lima's Old Town on 29 December 2001 caused 463 fatalities and destroyed 4 entire blocks. An explosion on 21st September 2001 in ammonium nitrate store into fertilizer factory operated by the Total Final ELF group of Toulouse resulted in 1 lakh claims and 27,000 damaged house and 10,000 bodily injury, including 4,800 occupational accident and 30 deaths. A fire at the plastic toy factory in Bangkok in 1991, in which more than 200 workers, mainly young women, were killed. Fire and explosion in petrochemical plant like explosion on 19th November 1984 in a storage facility for propane and butane situated within the municipal area of Mexico City, in which more than 500 people died and around 7,000 people were injured. Most of the dead were found within 300 meters of plant. Since 1962, 40,000 people had moved into the originally uninhabited area surrounded in the storage facility. Now you have seen all urban areas, densely populated areas, they have seen and suffered from bigger urban disasters. So, what are the long-term threat that the society is having in the urban environment? Soil and groundwater. Because of that, lot of toxic substances in use, there is a heavy metal in water, costly water purification because the effluents are concentration of effluents are very high in the river streams, natural streams, that is making lot of money to be poured for really purifying the water. pH balance. In the urban areas, pH balance is absolutely not potable and it requires some sort of treatment. Soil salinity, fertility has also gone down because the imbalance of pH, adulteration with the certain toxic substances. So, this is the basic impact on the soil and groundwater. Sewage system, it is also very badly affected. Air, water and land pollution, this is also there. Air, you know, the SOx, NOx and ppm, how much is the suspended particles, what is the concentration, and mostly we are finding in all urban areas the concentration of sulfur, SOx, NOx and other carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and total suspended particles, they are quite high, and that is also impacting in a big way to our health. And especially in urban areas, we are finding that the people are suffering from some sort of allergy, sometimes of some sort of breathing problems are there. So, these are the problems which is ultimately intangibly, indirectly affecting our health. Then infectious diseases like SARS, plague, TB, chikungunya, this is more prominent in the urban environment. Social and political risk, crime. The economic costs are accordingly very high. According to the estimates, the total cost of private security in one of the country like Brazil, it amounts to about 10% of the GDP. Similarly, we are finding that more killings and more of the crimes and nuisance, it is more concentrated in the urban environment. Terrorism, Mumbai, Delhi or London bomb blast, these are a few examples of terrorism in the urban environment. Terrorism attack in Russia, this is also one of the example. 9/11 US attack, that everybody knows about it, and we can understand that how our urban environment is more prone to the terrorism than the rural environment. War, we have seen the First World War or either Second World War, Iraq War or either Israel War or Afghanistan War. This is all happening and it is taking the shape of a disaster in turn. Also, we are finding that in the developing countries and many of the buildings are coming up, and they are coming up in a skyscrapers mode, like the story is about 100 story or 80 story, that requires lot of attention, and if attention is not given and proper codal provisions are not followed, the impacts, once the disaster comes, the impact will be really colossal. Now, after seeing this, that what type of natural disasters we have, what type of man-made disasters we have faced in the urban environment, what are the basic challenges are lying with the administration, with the community, with the developers? The first thing is that we need to go for urban risk management. We need to identify the risk. We need to identify the hazards. We have to do the vulnerability assessment, and urban risk estimation and planning work has to be done. How to identify the hazards? Hazards are very quite common. We have certain past history, past records are there, and we can see that how many times in 100 years of time or 200 years of time, what type of disasters have visited that area, it has been affected, and based on that we can work it out that okay, with 5 category of disasters like geological, hydrological, meteorological, might be your biological, industrial, nuclear disasters, or some sort of your biological disasters, accidental disasters. So these disasters, what is the level of risk involved in that particular urban area? Then if we take out of 20 disasters, 10 disasters are priority disasters where attentions are immediately required, then for those particular type of hazards or the risk, we need to go for absolutely working out the vulnerability. So what type of people, what section of our society it is going to be badly affected, and what infrastructure is going to be affected by this particular type of disaster, that is required to be worked out. And then once you work out the vulnerability of this particular area or urban environment, then it is very easy to go for urban risk estimation, and based on that you can go for treating those risks and developing in terms of plan, and the plan has to be executed. Second very important key issue is that the techno-legal regime. This is the concept which is very much required to be addressed. Earlier in India we have Bureau of Indian Standards, and the basic responsibility of Bureau of Indian Standards to establish and evolve the standards for any type of development. Either it's industrial development, either it's a physical development. In all places there is a requirement of some sort of standards. And suppose if you want to make your houses in some urban area or rural area, you need to follow certain standards, and if you are following the standards appropriately and precisely you are following the standards, then your house will be very safe, not only for the normal safety, normal development, but also during the disaster it will be quite safe. Bureau of Indian Standard has developed many of the codal provisions, like for earthquake, for floods, for cyclone, for even different type of industrial disasters. There are certain norms, there are certain guidelines have been developed by Bureau of Indian Standards. And now what government is doing is that the government is taking those guidelines, those codal provisions, and clearly spell out that this particular thing is required to be streamlined in the development process, so that whatever development which takes place, it is disaster resistant development. So these two terms like techno-legal regime and urban risk management, these are required to be taken parallelly towards a very safe urban built environment. So this is all about urban risk management, and today's lecture we discussed about what are the basic factors which governs the urban disasters, what are the components, how it affects our society, our environment, and what are the current burning issues for urban risk management. We discussed about it today. Thank you.